This conference will now be recorded.
All right. Thank you so much to everyone, both in person and virtually, that is joining the September Shelby County Lead Prevention and Sustainability Commission meeting. Today is September the 4th, 2014. I call this meeting to order at 6:06 p.m. Central Standard Time. We can go ahead and begin with the first item on the agenda, which is roll call. So I'll start. Latricia Adams, Chair, present. Secretary Matthew Woods.
Present.
Member Sharon Hyde. Present. All right, those are all the LPC members who are currently present. We currently do not have quorum, so any item that we discuss on the record this evening until we reach quorum will just be for discussion. We won't be able to take a vote. All right, so we can go into the next agenda. Oh, oops, pause. We do have one person from the general public that is here in person as well. And we currently have 3 people at current who have joined virtually. Right. Moving into the next item on the agenda is public comment. I did not receive any public comment via email as of 6 p.m. this evening. However, I do want to pause and ask if we have anyone in person that would like to make comment. Just a reminder that we have 3 minutes for public comment. After we move from any commenters in person, we'll then move to any commenters that we may have virtually. So beginning with our in-person member from the public.
I'm not sure if this is relevant to this group, but I've just been listening to the concern we had about.
Okay, pause. So this is your comment, Chet. You have to just introduce yourself first. Okay.
Chet Kibble, and I've been listening to the different things going on between city council and the state of different things about the gun bill. And one of the things I thought that should be discussed that might help them with their position, why we need to have stricter gun bills, is to kind of discuss the lead issue that we have here in Memphis, the things that have happened in the past, why we have, I think it contributes a lot to our problem, violence, etc. So I think that might be something that would help the mayor and them as they discuss why Memphis wants to have stricter gun policies.
Okay. And just for thank you for that, Chet. And for a point of clarity, is it more so connected like to lead having a correlation to violence, or just like the actual like lead and bullets, or
No,
both?
no,
Oh,
they exposure and violence
okay.
because of the long history that we've had, and most of the people in the group here know how long that's been. Memphis has a very extensive history of lead exposure, and now with science proving that the levels that we thought was okay were nowhere near okay. We now know we have a lot of people in our community that should be classified as chronically lead poisoning.
Okay. So is there a call to action from this body? Would you like for us to provide have regarding that issue?
Yes, I would, because I think if city council, the different ones that's presented to the state, if they had, if they could show the position, they could show the reasoning, for why we want to have those stricter gun laws. And I think it can be kind of be justified when you look at the history and just share a little bit of our lead exposure levels versus what was acceptable in the past versus what we experienced, and then what is acceptable now. It'll be pretty visible that something happened. Uh,
Okay. Do you want that exclusively to be addressed to city council, or do you also want to include state house representatives as well?
yes,
Okay.
that would be good because I think a lot of them are not really aware of what Memphis is working through.
Okay. Thank you. All
I
right.
appreciate you.
Noted. Thank you. All right. Is there anyone who has joined us virtually who would like to make public comment? Just a reminder that we have 3 minutes allocated for each commenter. Totally optional, but just want to address um, anyone that may want to make comment that has joined us virtually. All right, hearing none, we will move forward with the remainder of our agenda for this evening. Agenda item 3 is approval of the minutes from July 11, 2024. Being that we currently do not have quorum, we can just review those minutes. And for those who are joining virtually, if you access the agenda, there's a hyperlink that's embedded that can give you access to the July 2024 minutes. However, I can also drop the minutes directly into the chat box here in just a few seconds.
I had one clarification. The approval of the minutes say 7-Eleven, but this says 7-1 on the actual minutes. Is it 7-Eleven or 7-1?
Oh, that's a good question. Hold on, let me go back and see.
And did we
July
have it
seems
at
so long ago.
do we have it at the library, the main library that day?
We did,
Okay.
because this library was going through renovation. All right, so that is a great question. Let's look. It was actually on, let me see.
It was the first place. That 4th of July was that week 2.
Okay, I gotta go to the calendar. Let's go back to.
First was a Monday.
I know it wasn't a
Yes,
traditional.
it was
the
Monday
first.
first.
It was the first. Okay, so we'll have to amend this agenda language. The Bitly link, it can stay the same. That's just so people can easily access it. But thank you for noting that. Right, and let me get this link for those who have joined us virtually. All right, for those who have joined us virtually, I just dropped the link in the chat box for you to access those minutes as well. Just for a point of reference, while we're not voting on this, there was an adjustment to be made to the current agenda where the last LPC meeting took place on, on July the 1st, 2024, as opposed to the 11th. So that has been noted on the record. All right. Any points of discussion on the July 1st, 2024 minutes? All right. Oh, I can give you some more time. It's a lot of minutes. Good job, Secretary Woods.
Well, we're in a short indicate.
Okay. All right. So we are all good with our review and no additional commentary regarding the minutes from the July 1st, 2024 meeting. So we can move to the next agenda item, which is old business. The first item is update regarding the reported MLGW violation of EPA RRP training regarding weatherization contractors. So to date, MLGW has pretty much gone stale with their response to this issue. It was indeed, in fact, a cited violation. From our understanding, this has now been reported to EPA for further review. There's some additional legal matters that are in place as well, but I won't go into detail about that. But there is additional action that's taking place in regards to this particular violation. This violation was originally cited, I believe, back in October of 2023. So we're going on a year now, which is very disheartening and disappointing. that we have not heard any additional correspondence from this body or to this body from MLGW. However, nevertheless, with community advocates, are remaining steadfast with ensuring that there is justice served with this particular violation. But I did want to go on the record to say that MLGW has not responded with their quote unquote investigation on this matter. And next month will mark one whole calendar year since this violation was stated on the record during public comment. For LPC members, any additional point of clarity or discussion? Again, we're not voting on anything, and we also don't have quorum, but wanted to open it up for discussion to any LPC members.
When was the last time we reached out to them for comments?
Well, that's an excellent question. I will pull that up for you right now. Thank you, Member Hyde. Pulling that up right now. So the last time that we attempted to get a response, and I did a read receipt, so they still didn't respond, but they read the email on Friday, March the 15th, 2024. But there was no response. So based on this read receipt, it was read on Friday, March the 15th, 2024, in military time, 16:50 p.m. Central Standard Time, with no response. Thank you.
I did tell you about the AOL group.
All right. Any other points of discussion? Okay. Going into the next item for old business is progress with MLGW on their lead service line replacement plan. So I have not heard any additional updates. I believe the last update was provided in committee with City Council. However, it was more so just a presentation and not a comprehensive plan. Hopefully, being that the deadline for the inventory is in October, and the inventory will essentially dictate whether or not, what funding may be available for them to move forward with doing more, I guess aggressive is the best word, replacement, will kind of be set at that point. Um, but the last thing was just a presentation and an update to committee, but that's still not a plan. It was a presentation. And what I mean by a lead service line replacement plan, that means that you clearly articulate where within the city you're going to start, what the deadlines are, what the timelines are. That still has not been presented to the general public, whether it be through MLGW, through their own media devices, nor with City Council. Furthermore, as it relates to some of the community requests that came in, I can go over some of those updates as well. So I can say, first and foremost, the first request from MLGW was to establish a community task force that specifically focuses on lead. Is unknown. We have not received any correspondence one way or other if they're going to move in that direction to establish that body. The next recommendation that came from the community was to conduct a 10-year lead service line replacement cost analysis and ask for local, state, and federal funding. Now, while I can say with the latter, with asking for local, state, and federal funding for state, MLGW, for the first time in history, this is celebratory quasi, requested state revolving funds specifically earmarked for lead service line replacement. However, they did not get that money. Hopefully, moving forward into 2025, they'll apply again. My inferences are, and this is just an inference, it is not fact. I am inquisitive if it has anything to do with there not being a solid plan, what I just named earlier. Hopefully, with some feedback, they will be able to move forward to get that funding. Nevertheless, I do celebrate the fact that they did a request for the first time in history. Hopefully, that trajectory will remain the same. As it relates to local funding, we need to see that line item explicitly in the budget. So that's to be determined.
I do want to add one thing, that they have updated their map with a lot
Oh,
more
yep, that's an agenda
information.
item in
Oh,
new
is it?
business.
Okay, I
Yes,
didn't notice
ma'am.
this. I figure that maybe this is looking that they have to do this to get their
Yes,
inventory straight.
yes.
So that's a good sign
That
that
is
they
a good
have.
sign. So that's a good caveat to the federal funding. So they are positioning themselves to seek federal funding, which is why they, and we'll go into more detail in new business about the update to the lead service line inventory map, or the GIS map. So they are positioning themselves to seek federal funding. That is very positive. Prior to the current leadership with MLGW, meaning prior to CEO and President Doug McGowan, MLGW said that they had not sought funding since the 90s, specifically for lead service line replacement. So I do acknowledge and celebrate that. That is something that has been reflected, has been an action item where we can see that there has been some progress. As it relates to cost analysis, to be honest, it's kind of, they're still on track because they still have to get the inventory done. So until like they can completely get to the best place with inventory, it's a little bit difficult for them to do like a direct cost analysis. But I think what we were asking for is just kind of a ballpark figure. But they're really not going to be able to really know what they can get until they meet the deadline, which it looks like they will in October. So I will say that's pretty much on track slash in progress. The next item that was a recommendation from the community was to update the outdated inventory map. This is an agenda item for new business, but I do want to say that they are on track. If you actually go to the MLGW website, and you go to the link where it says lead map, you'll see a different look. So now there's much more specificity around the types of lines that you see. Also, historically, there used to be like a colored dot that historically used to be a solid color, either green, yellow, or gray. But now there's in some instances, there's a line in between the dot where it indicates like what exists on one side and the other, if there's two different materials on each side. So the recommendation to MLGW was for them to look at the DC water inventory map, and they did, and it is very much so aligned to that inventory map. I'm very excited that they are on track with that. I would say that they get a green check for that. So kudos MLGW on that. The next recommendation from community was to immediately inform all MLGW customers who currently have lead service lines. That's in progress. So essentially, when MLGW is about to actually start a lead service line replacement, they do provide notification to the resident. In that notification, they essentially say that they have within their ability to do the replacement on the public side. They do communicate to the resident, if they are the homeowner, then the onus is on the homeowner to get that side of the line replaced. If they're a renter, it does require consent. There is some questionable issues with there being partial replacements. However, we anticipate with the potential funding that may come from the federal government that may remedy that issue. There's also an outstanding issue that's outside of the purview of MLGW that requires city council. So right now, there is nothing that protects renters. So essentially, if you are a renter, you don't have consent because you're not the property owner to replace that line. So there has been a call to action to city council to do their research and develop either an ordinance or some type of local policy that will allow renters to circumvent or go around the homeowner and allow the renter to give consent. What has been recommended for city council to look at is Newark or the state of New Jersey, as well as Benton Harbor in Michigan. Um, I can't really say. I guess it's in progress. We might need to do some more assessment and be a bit more uh, assertive with city council, especially as we're getting closer to October with that deadline, because we don't want to create equity issues where you have homeowners that are able to get their lead service lines replaced, but renters who are the most vulnerable won't be able to get their full service lines replaced. So that was a item that I wanted to provide updates on as well. Another key thing that is an issue is while there is a litany of lead service lines that exist within the city, what would be ideal is if every single person that has a lead service line receives a notification. In a perfect world, people will go into this map and go put their address in and see that they have a lead service line, but we know that that's not the case, right? We also know that we have a digital divide. People may not be able to navigate that map or even access that map. There are community groups that exist within the city that have conducted door knocking campaigns to engage with those residents that do have lead service lines to notify them, but that's just a few nonprofit organizations. So there does need to be greater effort around notification to these respective customers, not just in the instance where they're about to do the lead service line replacement, which is good. We want you to notify people, but the ask was to tell everybody that's got a lead service line to do a notification. If you can send somebody a bill, you can send somebody a note that they got a lead service line. And then the last thing that's on the recommendations from community is a request for funding for a filtering program. That coincides with the request to notify everybody that has a lead service line. So right now, if MLGW is about to replace your lead service line, then they do provide water filters to those customers. But what about all the people that are not in the lineup, or in order to get their lead service lines replaced, they still got lead in their water, right? So we understand the financial constraints that's associated with filtering. Right now, MLGW is just trying to find the money to replace the line. So this also involves city council to be more involved as it relates to preventative measures. But it also takes MLGW to be explicit to ask for this directly when they get their budget approved, which we have not seen. Um, I can't say that that's in progress. It's kind of unknown, but that is a recommendation that came from community. Whew, that was a lot of information, but I want to open it up for discussion from LPC members. Again, we don't have quorum, so we're not going to vote on this item. It will just be for a matter of discussion.
I just wonder about the filter program, how that would look. I think would be helpful. But I have like one of those zero water filters, and
Yeah,
sometimes they frustrate me just trying to,
I know it's so slow.
yeah.
Yeah.
It is very slow.
So I could give some examples of some places that I've worked with directly. Really, Flint is the only example that I can give. The best one where I've seen like firsthand what it looks like. It's expensive. So it requires funding from both the local level and from the state level. But the thing is, Flint was able to get those filters because it was a state of emergency. So a state of emergency was declared at the local level and at the state level. Now, if the city of Memphis wanted to do that, and then it trickled up to the state, then there could be emergency funding that could potentially be allocated where that they could get some additional funding that can go towards filters. So that's the caveat around Flint, but it will require a state of emergency. Now, excuse me, they're in Ohio. So Ohio also issued filters as well, but they were also more aggressive in their replacement. So they're replacing more like service lines, and they already have approval to replace the full line. So because they're a bit more aggressive with their replacement, then everything is happening at the same time. So they're doing the replacement, and then they immediately like issue out those filters during that process. So it's easier if it's all kind of packaged together, right? Newark is kind of like the model. It's very similar to Ohio, also very similar to Benton Harbor in Michigan. The only caveat again for Benton Harbor, it was a state of emergency. That's the same thing that happened in Newark. Newark declared a state of emergency, so they did it at the local level and the state level. So that was the caveat there. I think Ohio, they didn't do a state of emergency. They just prioritized lead service line placement and they funded it. So those are examples that I'm the most familiar with. So it is possible. It just depends on how much of a priority does our leadership put on lead service lines. But that was a good question, ma'am. Sharon, did you have
I
anything?
do not have anything to add.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, we have gotten so much press around Memphis and lead service lines, especially within the last like 1 to 2 years. I mean, a myriad of things could happen. I mean, you also have support from the federal government like we've never had before. If you declare the state of emergency, then you can also potentially get federal funding as well. So it's advantageous if somebody did declare a state of emergency. So, yeah, we'll see. We could potentially, we can always ask. That has not been an ask from this body. Um, the ask would have to go to city council. The ask could also go by way of our state representatives as well, because it would have to go up to the governor in order for the governor to declare a state of emergency. Now, I don't know about that.
Yeah, especially if there's no numbers to
I
show
know.
that there is high levels in the water.
hmm
And that's gonna
That's a
be
good point, Sharon. So, in the instance with Flint, Michigan, for example, I mean,
the
that
water.
was catastrophic. And it was because they didn't put an agent, they didn't put the anti-corrosive in to treat the water. So it's a different type of issue. Now in Newark and Benton Harbor is also a little bit different. Um, mm,
Yeah, I think that's gonna, for a state of emergency, you have to show numbers.
yeah,
There are not numbers
yeah, we
to,
might not have enough data. And also, with lead exposure, it's difficult to name like where the exposure happened. So we also have old housing stock, right? So in many of these instances, you did it double time. So you might have a home that has lead paint. You also may have a lead service line as well. It's difficult to pinpoint like where the exposure happened. And depending on like your family dynamic, if you're thinking about a child, it could have happened at grandma's house or your auntie's house. So a lot of work needs to go into data. So that's a good point around how do we how do we collect data on all the various sources in which you could potentially be exposed to lead. So this is a good conversation.
yeah.
No, yeah.
And even, in the LIRA, they're not testing for water because you can't do water under the lead program. So the only way we get data is if the homeowner shares their results from the lead water test.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like last year, we probably put in 100 and we had 0 that had lead. Now, that doesn't mean
Yeah.
from another source there may have, but from that initial test, there was no lead. And that's what a state of emergency is going to go with.
Yeah, and water is so hard because water is water.
Water.
You
It's
can literally
fluid.
test today
Right.
and it can say one thing, and then you literally can test later on in the day and it can say something different. Where with paint is easy, it's
Yeah.
easier, right? But with water, it gets sticky. Then also the issue with lead is chronic exposure. So we know, like for example, they did a recall on applesauce packets like back in November. So it's all these different mediums, if you will, that you can be exposed. So you do have to have something that's like blatant, like a Flint, like a Benton Harbor, like a Newark, where it was like, you can't even, it's not even up for debate, like how prominent those levels were. And we don't have the data set we just don't have it right now. We don't have it right now, but this is good. But, okay. So those are the updates with MLGW. So it wasn't awful. So there was some, kudos to community, to this body. Um, I'm excited to see that there's some things in the green. So it's a marathon, right, and not a race. Amen. Um, all right, so we can go into the next item for old business, which is to discuss and revisit the county call for a pollution reduction plan. So with this plan, I do know, at least, yeah, on the county side, I think that they are making strides, because there's a big focus on greenhouse gas reduction. The only thing that I will say is there's not a big enough presence as it relates to public health. So there's a lot of focus like on like built infrastructure, and pollution reduction that way, but it's not enough intersectionality as it relates to health. Um, this is a big issue across the board. We're seeing just a lack of interconnectedness as it relates to even like with the climate plan versus like what we see implications like with public health. Because with the climate plan, you need to have public health outcomes. You could do have all these beautiful metrics around, we, reduce such and such tons. That's not my ministry in that field of pollution. But what happens to the human beings, right? So did we see a decrease in like pediatric asthma, like hospital visits, so like there's an absence of connection to humanity, essentially, in this. I think that this calls like for like beyond this body. um we are sorely lacking as it relates to truly making the connection between pollution reduction, environment, and public health. I don't even know what to say. So we did do a presentation, I think, like 3 years ago at this point, but the focus of that presentation was around funding. So they did that. So the county did a really good job to apply for Justice 40 funding.
And they did put in for the climate reduction
They did,
grant,
but they didn't get it
was
right.
not awarded.
Yeah,
So.
I'm wondering if it could have been beefed up like with the public health part.
Mhm.
But nevertheless, that was our ask, and they did respond to that, with trying to take advantage of the resources that were readily available for funding. Even the health department has received a significant amount of funding, but it's disparate. It's still not interconnected. I have yet to see intersectionality between climate goals, pollution reduction goals, along with or alongside with public health goals. So I don't know. And again, this is just for discussion. I want to reiterate that we're not at quorum, so we're not voting. But I'm wondering, should we go back? One, to say thank you for making the initiative to apply for this funding. There has been significant work. Kudos to John Zena's team with Lee Huffman, that's been doing a really good job, with the community engagement component around climate, and that's great. But we need public health people to be at the table with that as well.
Yes, so just the update that it was applied for in April 2024. They were August 5th notified that there were 300 applications received and only 25 were awarded for the 4.3 million. There is a place for the Inflation Reduction Act, CPRG implementation grants. That they are still moving forward with the process for the Mid-South Comprehensive Climate Action Plan, and recommendations to address sources of greenhouse gas emissions within Memphis MSA. So that was kind of the update.
Yeah. And again, I mean, they're doing their due diligence. We're trying, but I really just want to push, and I really want people. And I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say. I really want our public health people to not be defensive, and I really want them to be collaborative. This is not the time for this. Again, we could have that climate plan that came from the county. I mean, it is pristine. It is. I'm proud of them, and that is great. But it's sorely lacking on public health. But that's not their job. That those departments that put that application together, they're working within their own ministry and their own gifts, and it is sorely lacking with public health.
Yes, it
And
was
I can,
weatherization.
yep,
It was a
mhm,
lot of greenhouse gas reductions in the form of CO2, getting things energy ready to get rid of gas appliances, doing weatherization programs for West Memphis, for Memphis, a lot of training of weatherization contractors, but nothing with public health so much, even in
and it
their
could have been
counties.
powerful, especially when you talk about, like, for example, like transition from, well, you can just talk about like what do you call it, like this whole, like, in this where you could do like transition from gas to electric. That's
Right.
big, right? It's a ton of research that has come out that a lot of indoor air pollution stems from gas. And I mean, I think about my grandparents, rest their soul, they love gas. I grew up in gas. I got asthma. I had asthma as a child. I still have it as an adult. And I think about like implications with that. It would have been powerful in that application. Yes, let's talk about like all of this like energy efficiency and things inside of the home, but then also pairing it with,
How is this going to make the people in the home
yes, safer and
and
healthier.
healthier?
Yep. So yeah. Um, Again, kudos to Lee and team that work. Oh my gosh, they work so hard. Oh, that was so sad about this grant.
We were getting it.
Oh, it hurt my feelings. They worked so hard. I mean, they did a really good job with bringing in community stakeholders to inform that application. But maybe a lesson learned is I really, really think that bringing it home is to have
Yeah.
that health aspect. So, yeah, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm just gonna be honest, and it is on the record, and it might ruffle some feathers, but I just really need our public health sector to be collaborative and just not be defensive, and know that we all have the same goal, which is quality health for Memphis and Shelby County. And I'm gonna leave it at that. Yes, sir.
Hey, last meeting you mentioned that every time the Lung Association does testing, you receive a bag, right?
Yeah, every single year that the American Lung Association does their state of the air report, Shelby County gets an F. Every year, the air quality is horrible.
Is it like a routine test that's done every so often? Is it an update? Is it still F grade air?
I think in some categories we might get a D or C, but overall we get an F. I mean, Memphis historically and currently is heavy in industry. I mean, I think about my folks are from Riverside. It's an oil refinery right across the street from a residential community. We got ETO issues. I mean, we have a litany of air quality issues. So yeah,
It's just ongoing and
it's just
yeah.
ongoing and it's not improving. And we have projects. We have projects that are currently operating without air permits. But I'm gonna leave it alone for all intents and purposes of this call, but we got to call a thing a thing. We really need for our health department to do a better job, and people can feel how they want to feel. And I said what I said. Yep. All right. So all of that to say, I'm still wondering if I don't even know like what the best strategy is. Um, yeah, I don't know, but we got to do something. Like, I don't know if, and I know that it again is going to put people on defense, but I don't know if it is like if our county commissioners, if they are fully understanding of how dire the issues are with air quality. I don't know if there needs to be like some sort of report, but the issue is we don't trust government. So we don't trust government to report on themselves, right? To be honest. But then if you have like community groups to present, then that's also going to put the health department on defense and make it seem like you're not being collaborative. But I'm like, but the air quality is bad. It's bad. Like people dead. People got asthma, children missing days out of school. So
We were ranked 121 worst county for 24-hour particle pollution
Jesus.
and 84 worst for annual pollution out of 204 metropolitan areas.
Oh God.
So
You said it was 100 and what now?
121 worst
121 out of 200?
out of 200.
Jesus. Yeah,
So
see.
it's called state of the air.
Yep.
So that's where you find
Hmm. We got to do something. It's not, it's getting worse. It's getting progressively worse. And as we start to invite polluters into our Black communities, I'm just really scared. Not the health department, but the other powers that be,
it.
other decision makers. It's very disheartening. It truly is. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Because it'll be a tussle. But they need to know.
Right.
The county commission needs to know how bad this is.
Right.
What's the best way to start? Right, we've already started. What's the best way to continue?
I mean, we can engage a member of county commission to ask if we can come back to present. I'm going to be honest, outside of the scope of my work of this body, it probably makes sense for me not to do the presentation. Should we go before county commission again? But we can get somebody to put us either like on a committee meeting. I think that's what we did the first one is through committee, where we just tell them like this is the state of affairs. So we did something similar along even before that when we were talking about lead service lines.
Yeah.
Yep, we were talking about lead service lines a long time ago, and I broke it down like by each person's district, and they were like, "No, wait a minute," because it was Bartlett that was the
Yeah.
wild card, and they were like, "No, wait a minute," and so it worked, with them being like, "No, look, y'all gonna have to get it together." So I mean, we have seen that strategy work and kind of shake things up, but see, here's the thing though. It's easy when you talk about MLGW because that doesn't have that connection to the county.
Right.
MLGW is on the city side. But see, when you talk about the health department, that's on the county side. So the politics with that, I don't know. Anyway, they need to know.
Right.
They need to know. I mean, we might have to table it, but they need to know. Like this is bad.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, I'll put a star by that one. All right. Well, we can go to the next agenda item under old business, which is a discussion and update for preparing for the next legislative session. So, um, this last legislative session, we took a gamble. We discussed this in the last LPC meeting around trying to get a bill passed for universal blood lead level testing. It didn't fail miserably. It got 3 yeses. 2 of the 3 were conservative. I will use that terminology because I don't want to get in trouble for any bipartisanship issues. Um, I think so. The fiscal note killed the bill. The fiscal note was misinterpreted, where on the financial side, because you can go to the MLK 50 article to see that quote from said individual, interpreted the bill to say that every single student enrolled would be tested. That is not what that bill called for. It literally said entering kindergartners would be tested and to use the same model that you use for immunizations. So all of that to say, I think that if it's picked back up, that there will be some additional sponsors, and it looks like it would be bipartisan because you had both sides of the aisle that was represented in the yeses. The questions that came up when Sharon and I, ooh, that was nerve wracking, and Long spoke before the Senate, it was about money. What was recommended was to look at the strategy that now current County Mayor Lee Harris, when he was formerly state senator, to look at what he did to get the lead bill passed for mandatory testing in school drinking water. Um, so all of that to say, I still think that there may be hope. That will be big if we can get that passed. I think that we could. I just think that the way that it was introduced, it was a wish list. It had like test all the
Right.
kids that's coming into juvenile detention centers,
Right.
which we would love that, but it was
Right.
like
Plus,
anything we can get in there.
they moved us down on the agenda and let somebody else take an hour and a half on the agenda. So by the time we got to
Mhm.
speak, they gave us about 2.2 minutes.
Yep. And they were still mad at whatever happened on that previous agenda item. So they were like,
They were wanting to get out. They
Yep.
wanted to recess.
and it was the
So-
end of the meeting, and
Yeah.
yeah. But I think that there's still hope.
And then one of them was a
Also,
doctor, correct? Was there a doctor?
yeah, and it was a lot of doctors that were there that day. It was
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Which
But it is somebody that like has a public health background.
And we
But
thought that would be good to go back for
yeah.
bipartisan support of it.
So I think that it can happen. And then also we're waiting to see what comes up. Even though this is an interesting like caveat, I want to see what shows up in the lead and copper rule.
Yeah.
Because if it, and fingers crossed, if it has anything in it that adds more teeth around testing for child care centers and schools, then that may give us a little bit more leverage. So we'll hopefully see next month, since
Yes.
we're in September now, because the rule is slated to be released at some point in October. But nevertheless, I think that is hope. Um, I do think so. One other thing that I want to note is kudos and thank you. She is the bomb.com to Senator London Lamar. She was the sole sponsor. So I do think that moving forward, it has to have more sponsors on the front end. But it was rushed. It was rushed. And then also that was the end of like session. So everything has to be reintroduced again in this upcoming legislative session anyway. So I think it's hope. So we may have some additional point of conversation and discussion pending the release of the lead and copper rule. So to be determined. But any points of discussion? No. Fingers crossed. I'm like, please. I feel it in my spirit. Please, let's get this bill passed. We got one that we would never think would come out of Tennessee. Shout out to former Senator Lee Harris, current mayor. I was proud of him singing his praises before I moved back to Memphis. So let's make history again. Um, okay, we can go to next section of the agenda, which is new business. A good segue for the lead and copper rule. The lead and copper rule did go to the OMB. They are on schedule to release in October. I had an opportunity to go to the EPA water stakeholder meeting. Was it in July? I went in person, and they seem optimistic. I will say where I have a little bit of hesitation, and this goes back to what we discussed previously on the agenda, that situation with lead service line replacement and renters. I think that's still gonna be sticky because it's so local, but I don't know. So I did ask a question, and of course they couldn't divulge too much, and their response was, "We also have that concern." So
Well,
I
I'm
could read it
wondering
between the
on
lines.
that if it will change any, because like under lead and copper rule with schools having to, test.
Mhm.
I'm hoping that they will make them comply with the action levels of EPA instead of their own action levels or the action
Yeah.
levels of the state, because
Mhm.
when they notified the schools that had high lead, it was 20 parts per billion.
Mhm.
And you're missing all these numbers that they're not reporting, because there was a lot of schools that did have, sevens, eights, 10s, 12s, 15s. So I'm hoping with the new lead and copper rule, it would also make those numbers be consistent across the board of what we're looking for action levels in water. So
That's a good point. And I made a note here that, and this kind of aligns to item E under old business. I think we also need to prepare to go and ask for that amendment again to the current bill for mandatory testing in school drinking water. If there is provisions that's explicitly named in the lead and copper rule improvement, then it'll be easy to get that amendment. Which was the recommendation the first time, but COVID happened and all of that, and we just left it alone because we don't want them to gut that bill.
right.
But hopefully it'll be some meat that comes through that lead and copper rule improvement so that it'll be easier to get that amendment on that bill. That would be great. I do also know at one point we discussed trying to get get Memphis Shelby County Schools to do a local amendment. I still think that that's possible. We could do both but I still think that we got to wait to see what's going to come out in the lead and copper rule. Since we have a new superintendent, I think that this will be a really great opportunity. But verdict is still out on this updated rule. But I still think we should do both. The state is gonna be Tennessee. It's gonna be Tennessee. But with Memphis having the most exposed kids anyway, we think that that's the case. It might not be because Madison County is only testing 1% of their
Yeah,
kids.
they're not testing
They're
very
not
many.
testing very many. And Shelby County tests the most kids in the entire state of Tennessee, which is why we have higher numbers because we're testing the most kids. But that's neither here nor there. Shout out to Shelby County Health Department on that. Tested the most kids in the state. No matter what, for the last 8 years they
Yeah.
tested the most. Yep. Um. Okay. So we'll see on that one. Pending lead and copper rule improvement. Okay. Item B under new business. Yay! This is a win. EPA announced $26 million for testing and lead in school drinking water. Y'all, that made me cry happy tears. That is a big, big victory. Shout out to the Biden Harris administration. Of course, it will be what's the word I'm looking for? It'll still be on a volunteer basis. However, Tennessee is in a good position because when there was funding available, which was not a lot, Tennessee did take advantage of that. We did see even some schools, not a ton, that took advantage of that program. So I'm curious to learn more about how that money is going to move.
And who applies for it?
Yeah,
Is
I'm
it
not
an
sure
application
yet.
basis? Is it
Yeah,
entitlement? Is
I'm gonna
it
let's get some details on that. So I can reach out to get some more details on how it works. Because I think what we talked about before is a lot of folks didn't even know about that small pot of money
right?
um, that the state had. But nevertheless, that's a big win. A win for this body, something that we advocated hard for. To see it come from the federal government is awesome. So I made a note here to try to get some updates around, like, from process perspective, how's that gonna work? We're getting the money to the ground. Yay, victory. Um, okay, so item C update. We talked about the MLGW lead service line GIS map. Kudos to MLGW again. Even though they didn't say anything.
No, they didn't tell anybody.
They didn't tell
We
anybody.
went to use the scan and it didn't work. And we're like, what? Why is it not working?
That was a funny surprise.
Yeah.
But still proud of them. Um, what we can do on our end, we can use our social media to, celebrate that, to give them their kudos that they were responsive to community, and that also, like, we're looking. They got a lot of different moving parts, but super excited about that, where they, I mean, took that recommendation and ran with it. So that is definitely a win. Also, something that we didn't talk about, also that I was really excited about, they put dates. They
Yes.
updated the dates. So that was also something that we had mentioned historically in the previous JIS map. They had like dates in there like from like 2016, and I mean, like, we're in 2024. So they also like have that updated in there as well. So that was really good. So I wanted to note that
So it
as
says
well.
like one side would be lead on the public side.
Okay.
The other side is lead on the private side. And then it also shows if it was galvanized replaced, if it was galvanized required replacing.
Oh,
There's
I'm
a bunch of
impressed.
this galvanized requiring replacement stuff. And then yeah, like it does say the dates too. So it's,
You know what? I think another point of education is because we, in some other work in my other capacity, we have to educate people on what that means.
Mhm.
Like, what is a galvanized pipe? What is it? What is copper?
Yes.
Because that's excellent. But that, is some work that even community groups can push in to do. Maybe even if we do something on social, we can, and we can maybe like tap some of our water warriors. Maybe like Protect Our Aquifer does a phenomenal job with digital content. That may be something, if they got capacity. I'm not trying to volunteer anybody, but because they do a really good job, could be something that they could maybe support with, so people can know what that actually means. Yep. So, yay, big wins in new business. Um, Last item under new business is Lead Poison Prevention Week. Not to put you on the spot, Matthew, but I'm excited about what the county is doing. I know we're on board with that support, but did you want to give just a little summary?
So, when I bring a flyer, I'm gonna have a flyer.
It's
It's gonna
okay.
be something in Orange Mound. I think it's at the community center, the last week in October. It's gonna be a pretty significant event.
Yay.
I believe it's actually Shelby County and the city of Memphis led programs, if I'm not mistaken, plus other community involvement. It's gonna be fun.
I'm
TDEC is going
excited.
to be there doing some training.
Oh,
That
come
was
on, Tita.
confirmed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
So I think for the week prior to that Saturday is going to be more education at the library. People can get their children tested. They can request lead water line testing. They can just get information. There may be some RP training. They're trying to figure that out. And then on that Saturday will be where the vendors will have candy for the kids to come in. There'll be game trucks, food trucks, and a big event at either the church on
Is it
Saturday.
red zone or? So I need to confirm that, y'all.
Yeah,
So,
it's changed
Okay.
the location from what I remember, but
So,
it's
Sharon may-
October.
26th, I believe. Right?
Yeah, October 26th is the big date. Then the 21st through the 25th will be events leading up to it.
And as you were saying, a lot of the details are still being finalized.
Yeah. It's going to be
Okay.
called Hallow Lead event. HOLLOLEAD event.
I'm
So they're wanting
excited.
vendors to dress up.
Oh, well, the former
Non-sticky.
teacher in me is here for all of that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Because I know for Read Across America that I would have, my hat on,
Mhm.
Dr. Seuss hat. I'm here for all of it. Um, okay. Well, I did. So we still have callers on for announcements. Is Protect Our Aquifer on by chance? No. Yes. Couldn't come off mute. Okay. Hold on. Let's see if I can unmute someone Because I think that there is an announcement that will be good. I'm like, but I don't know if I'm. Now I'm trying to figure out how to unmute people. I'm like, how do we do the mute? Okay, protect our aquifer if you're on. You should be able to unmute now if you're still on. That me struggling with technology. Which one is she? Keep muted or not keep it muted. Should be able to. Okay, hold on one second because we do want to get this announcement on.
Can you hear me?
Yes, okay. We'd love to hear updates for our announcements portion.
Perfect. Well, thank you for patching me in. This is Sarah Houston. I serve as the Executive Director of Protect Our Aquifer. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to join y'all in person today, but I wanted to provide one update and just make a statement. The first update is more on the sustainability side of the work of this commission, and it had to do with an update on the groundwater board and the work of the water quality branch of the Shelby County Health Department. They are severely underfunded and undertrained to fulfill their duty of actually preserving and protecting our drinking water supply. And so we've been working to increase fees to bring them in line, more with the cost of processing well permits and septic permits. And really the intention is to help them achieve their actual ordinance that was passed in 1987 that actually gives them the power to protect our drinking water supply. And as of the groundwater board meeting just last month on August 22nd, the groundwater board actually requested that Protect Our Aquifer work collaboratively with the health department to update these fees. And so we are in the middle of that right now. And as we have a more fleshed out proposal, I definitely want to share with this commission just to make y'all aware that there is an approach to groundwater sustainability that's building. And these fee increases will eventually have to go before county commission. So any support that this body can provide, I think, would be very helpful to start actually building that program. And second FYI for y'all is in regards to XAI. This is the supercomputer that has opened in southwest Memphis in 38109. As y'all may be aware, they are demanding 1.3 million gallons of water per day. And we have been pushing for them to utilize recycled wastewater. So actually, put in some capital toward supporting either the creation of this or at least shifting their water source in addition to TVA. And the groundwater board is looking into passing a resolution that would support this stance. So again, this is in creation, but there may be an opportunity for this council to potentially pass a similar resolution that could just stand in support of sustainability initiatives and this water efficiency in relation to the potential drawdown effect that an additional drain on the Davis well field really has, where we've got arsenic, we've got some unfortunate contamination in the shallow aquifer that threatens the drinking water supply of southwest Memphis. It isn't in there yet, but the concern with an additional major water user is just speeding up the drawdown of that contamination. So shifting 2 to 3 major users to recycled wastewater could be a major step towards ensuring Southwest Memphis has clean drinking water for decades to come. So 2 things I wanted to just elevate to this council, make y'all aware of, and hopefully we have some things to share that y'all could either voice some support for or just as individuals, be aware of. And I'm probably going over time, Chairman Adams.
Okay.
But the last thing I wanted to mention in relation to MLGW lead and the recommendations community made in the black here, Protect Our Aquifer does still believe that there needs to be a dedicated community advisory council to specifically inform lead service line replacement. So we want to stay steadfast in that recommendation that has not had any follow through on. They did establish a community advisory council, but it's very broad, and I have been added to it, but it is not focused on lead solely. They just talk about lead every so often. So we still would like to see a dedicated advisory committee to get the lead out of the city. And with that, I will stop. Thank you for the time and opportunity.
Thank you so much. All right, so thank you. I felt that was some very much needed announcements to round out our meeting. I have a follow-up question. If the groundwater board can pass a resolution, I need to figure out, can we pass a resolution as well? So I'm gonna
wanting to use the 1.3 million gallons of water per day.
XAI Elon Musk.
Oh, the Elon Musk.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I'm going to do an immediate follow-up with our county attorney to see. I don't see like what prevents us from doing that, but I just want to know about process. Let me find out if we can do resolutions. Because if that's the case, like this whole thing around when we talked about the pollution reduction plan and all of that and putting like emphasis like on the health department, yeah, I want to get a brief from the county attorney to see what we can do. Because if the groundwater board can do it, why can't we do it too? Mm-hmm.
Well, from her conversation, she's asking for us to do the same. Like
Right. So this is perfect since we got it on the record. So, yep, great. So that's a big next step. Yeah, and I like the fact that also on the record, this is called the Shelby County Lead Prevention and Sustainability Commission. And sometimes with some agencies, they get confused about what we can do and put us in a box. So I want to say that. So we have every right, like within the way this the resolution was written, we are not like we don't have to be limited to a box. I think that the purpose was that we would eventually be able to venture out. That sustainability part allows for a lot of flexibility. So that definitely touches that. But great. That was some great announcements.
Is there any other ways we can support Protect Our Aquifer?
Yeah, so we can even right now, even if we, don't know, like right now it's gray around a resolution, we can always like do support letters. We've done that before. So for example, with the community recommendations, this body signed on to support that. So it really was an embodiment of recommendations from public comment, like since 2019. So we can do support letters. Um, that's an immediate thing that we can always do. We do. I mean, we can address county. We can really address whoever we want to address. We will have the most leverage because this is on the county side through county commission. However, we have historically addressed city council, and that was an interesting experience. But because we are mayoral appointed and county confirmed, we would have, the most influence with county commission and county specific agencies. But yep, we got a little flex, a little bit, a little bit. But I like that. Like, don't just tell me what I can't do. Tell me all the things that I can do. So I like that around this resolution piece. So I'm all on board around like the recycled water piece. I love that the groundwater board is learning what all they can do. Very much so would love for this body to even be more collaborative with other existing boards and commissions. I think that's really good. And then also, I can't read my notes. Yeah, that water quality component, that's a sore spot for the health department. I'll be transparent on the record. All I did was mention it in the pollution reduction plan, and I was met with a little resistance about. I literally just said what community said to me. Like we got public comment tonight, and I was met with resistance on that. And it goes back to I said there being some defense, but I'm Latricia and I'm a constituent and I don't care. And I said what I said. So I do think that that needs to be addressed. Like, what can you do? And just, okay, it's the difference between what you blatantly cannot do, but what the issue is not exerting your full extent of power. That's the issue. Like, what can you do? Not just what you can't do. So within your power, what can you do to protect people?
Um,
Mhm. All right. Oh, yes, sir.
Well, we,
Yep.
so I sat here and I remembered I do have a flyer in my phone.
Oh,
Virtual.
okay. Yep.
So something more specific.
Yeah,
And
so
this is,
just for on the record for the people that's virtually, we do have an update regarding the October Lead Poisoning Week event.
yes.
Yay.
So it says the city of Memphis and Shelby County lead hazard reduction programs. It's Boo Does Lead Scare You. It's Saturday, October
Yes.
26th. Saturday, October 26th. It's 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. 10 a.m.
Yay.
2 p.m. It's going to be at the Orange Mound Community and Senior Center. The address is 2590 Park. Again, it's going to be Saturday, October 26th, 10 a.m. to 2. Orange Mound Community Senior Center Gym, 2590 Park Avenue, 38114. Costume contest will be there, food, games, that type of thing.
I
So
love
please come out.
it.
I sent you a flyer.
Yeah, and we'll post it on our social media too. And I know we're a little bit late. God forgive me.
The committee worked really hard on this.
Yes, I could tell. We'll get it in the newsletter too, that we can send out. So that's awesome. Okay. Well, if there are no other points of discussion, we can go ahead and conclude. Because we don't have quorum, we will just end the September 4th Shelby County Lead Prevention and Sustainability Commission meeting at 7:18 p.m. Thank you all so much for joining and have a great evening. Good night.
Sarah's